I'd like to call to order the April 25th meeting of the Village of Cold Spring Planning Board. Chair's remarks, one thing I'd like to do is the applicant for 15 Main Street is here with some update amendment to the site plan and amended application. I'd like to add that to the agenda. Nobody has a, we'll do that after Karen presents for 3 Rock. All in favor? Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, motion,
No.
second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Okay.
Then we could go on to minutes. I think the 314, you said you had no comments on the 314 meetings?
Yeah, I sent
Okay.
you an email saying I think
Okay.
it's pretty much what
Okay,
we
very
said.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here-
I have no comments.
Here are the 411. Go through the 411 very quick. This was a pretty quick meeting. Through Rock Street, convert single-family residence, source architect Karen Parks, present plans, current deed, subdivision plan, existing one-family home, being converted into.
Hi,
Hello.
sorry I'm late.
No, no problem. We're just going through the 411 minutes.
Yeah,
Give you a copy. Although I don't think you were there, right?
I was not.
Okay.
I'll just review them to become.
For grammar.
Karen, the apartment is a long-term rental, is that?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Owner's architect. Okay, so 15 Main Street. The 3 Rock Street looks good to me, you guys?
Mhm. Yep, looks good to
15
me.
Main Street, change of use from commercial to
Yep.
commercial residential, which will change tonight. Owner's architect, G. Hartford. Nice plans, I found plans, She, need space from the property. Look on the side here. I don't think at this point it wasn't that the ramp would be in the side yard, I think it's that it could be. Owner wishes to purchase a portion of the side of the village of trustees, who wishes to desire to minimize the size of any such purchase. Revised design plan. Did we do that?
Hmm?
I guess we did, okay. Parking waivers will be required.
Did we receive comment from the village attorney? Yet? In the intervening,
For this meeting we did, yeah.
okay, right.
It's type 2 exempt.
Good.
Planning board. I think just in 21 Parsons, it's without a site plan, well, we did have a site plan, I think without a completed application.
We didn't receive, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron doesn't seem to agree, but, what that really was about, which was on the advice of village attorney, was that the 5 factors hadn't been
Had not
fully
been
kind of flushed out. There
described,
was just
right.
kind of some words around them. And obviously you can't really separate site plan approval from application and understanding. You can't review a site plan without understanding what the application is. Board is reluctant to comment upon a hypothetical situation unless there are comments in their own form or proceed with specific direction or approval. That's good.
I think that's fair. I think that's accurate.
I think a greater than 40% area variance is required. Planning board will actually comment other than advising. Okay, at this meeting, we did discuss that, that's absolutely right, but I think what we ultimately landed on is that we're not gonna provide any comment. It was I was willing to do it,
Well,
the two
it
of you
was-
said
They were separate, it was, we were not gonna issue any further comment. Except comment that we had provided previously.
other than previously provided,
Yeah.
okay.
Other than, previously provided advice.
Previously provided advice that a non-conformance in the application be reduced.
Yeah.
Great, that's good, I think. Anybody, anything else?
Yeah, is that?
Motion
is
to
that- motion
approve
to
the
approve. So
minutes as
moved.
amended?
Yeah.
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion's Those are both motions for the 3:14 and the 4:11 meeting minutes. Okay. Okay, so let's move on.
Do you have a copy of the resolution that I can pass down to you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What do you need?
I don't have your copy. I don't know if it
Oh,
has
all
that.
right, thank
Here.
you.
You can share.
Here it is, here it is.
Oh,
Okay, moving on. Any report of members?
No.
Nothing?
nothing to
Okay.
report.
We had no correspondence. We'll move on to the public hearing for 3 Rock Street. The legal notice that was posted in the last 2 issues of the paper, and then actually prior issues for the ZBA, so the public has had 3 to 4 weeks of notice of this, I think, plus the signage, which is posted, which is a great addition. That was really shepherded finally through by Aaron Wolf from the zoning board of appeals. It's really kind of very helpful that, you know, the more constructive notice we can get people and the more we can get people talking before things happen, the less, you know, less likely we have issues afterwards. So we have the affidavit for that being posted as well. The planning board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 25th at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter as a matter be heard at the Village Hall, 85 Main Street in Cold Spring to consider the application of High Rock Views LLC for site plan approval. The applicant is proposing to convert an existing single-family house to a 2-family home. The subject property is located at 3 Rock Street, Cold Spring, New York, and designated as tax map 42.12, block 1, lot 23.2. This property is located within the R3 multifamily residence district, as well as the village's local historic district. So, Karen, if you want to come up, I think we're pretty familiar with the project, and it looks like we're not going to get any public comment, which is always good. Did you get any public comment at CBA? Or?
No, because everyone
It's pretty-
was exhausted from the previous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we were there.
application, so
We were
everyone
there.
left,
That was an
and there was
exercise,
nobody
yeah.
left, so.
Did anybody even come and not hold
that's
out?
right,
Or
It was
they
empty.
No one was here when you left,
Yeah, it
by
was
the time
empty.
you left,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so would you like me to present it?
Yeah, I mean, you can
Same.
just go through it quickly. I think we're all pretty clear.
Okay,
And nothing changed, obviously. So the ZBA gave you the variance for the,
Correct.
okay, great, for the, just a slight underside, 25 feet on the,
it was 40
40 feet.
40
Okay.
square foot.
40,
variance, right.
Right.
Okay, I'm Karen Parks, I'm representing High Rock Views LLC, the owners of 3 Rock Street, and their proposal is to convert an existing single-family home to a 2-family residence. The proposal is to work within the existing footprint of the building, so they'll modify wall layouts to create the second dwelling within the existing footprint. There are no proposed changes to the exterior of the building. There are also no proposed changes to the site. We currently have 5 parking spaces on the site. We're required to have a total of 4, 2 per dwelling. So we feel the impact on the neighborhood will be minimal, if any. You know, obviously with 2 dwellings, there may be a slight traffic increase, but we don't feel that that would have a negative impact in any way. And because all of the construction is contained within the dwelling and the dwelling itself is very small, there shouldn't be a huge increase in use on the property as well. It's in the R3 district, in which 2-family dwellings are allowed, but the conversion from single to double requires site plan approval, which is why we're here.
Okay.
And
Is there a plan to separate water and sewer?
There is not,
Okay.
no.
So that maybe the village would just probably just give 2 meters, not 2 meters, but 2 meter costs.
You know, I'll have to follow up on that with
Okay.
the water and sewer
Okay.
department as well as the building department and see
I
what
guess
their
they call it
requirements
rents,
are.
right? Sewer rents. Okay. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Good.
That's it.
Does the board have any questions? I mean, I think we're all pretty clear on the application. We've
It's pretty
seen the
straightforward.
plans, there haven't been any changes. Obviously, the ZBA has issued the variance for the slightly undersized, and our code requires the minimum livable square footage being conditioned space, including the partition walls and all that, being 600 square feet, and they're at
Mhm.
560. So obviously, the ZBA's issued the variance for that, so I don't really think I have any questions. Have any questions about the application? It's pretty straightforward. John has advised that has agreed that this is seeker type 2 exempt, makes things a lot easier for the applicants. Used to be until, as of December 31st, anything adjacent or in a historic district was a type 1, which then requires a coordinated review across all the boards, and then the lead agency has to declare before the involved agencies can take a final action. So it's this really kind of orchestrated dance that luckily we can kind of shave a lot of time off for the applicants now. So this is, since there's minimal impact, since everything's happening inside the building, what I do now, especially, in some ways it was easier because everything's in or adjacent to it, to a historic, most of our applications, especially anything that's commercial. It made it easy to get it right because but now, so I typically just refer it over to the village attorney and just say, do you agree this is type 2 exempt? So, and he did, so that's where we are with that, so it requires no further review. We have the short form in the file. It's always good for us to get the short form filled out and just put it in the file. It's a little bit of seeker is better than none, even when it's type 2 exempt. And the short form is pretty painless to fill out for the applicant. The long one really kind of throws people into a tailspin because it's kind of weird to fill out a form where 70-80% of it is NA. It just feels like you're not filling it out. It was difficult for applicants. So this will make the process, I think, a lot easier. Because the type 1, that long form was really kind of intimidating because, like I said, you feel like you're not quite doing it right when everything doesn't apply, and in most cases it didn't apply. So this is one thing where government got a little bit more efficient, which will help us kind of get the applicants through, because it was more the coordination, who to establish a lead agency, then then all these public hearings, and then the lead agency has to declare before anybody else can. So now we eliminate all that. So that's all done. I guess we'll open it up for public comment. I think we've got Shuhi and the secretary. Anybody? Okay, very good. No comment? So does the board have any? Okay, so I guess we'll go straight to the resolution.
Okay.
Resolution of the planning board, Village of Cold Spring. I had John draw one up just before so we'd be ready. Parcel of real property located at 48.12, block 1, lot 23.2. Also known as 3 Rock Street. Planning Board, whereas the Planning Board has received an application from High Rockview LLC, the applicant to convert an existing single family to a 2-family dwelling, and whereas the subject property is located at section 48.12, block 1, lot 23.2 in the Village of Cold Spring, said lot also being known as 3 Rock Street, the property. And whereas the property lies within the village's R3, multifamily residential, as well as the village's historic district. Whereas the applicant, the highlighted is struck because there is no HDRB approval. Whereas the applicant applied to the village's zoning board of appeals in connection with a variance to permit an approximately 560 square foot dwelling when the code requires a minimum size of 600 square feet. Whereas the proposed action is a type 2 action under seeker of the seeker, no further environmental review under seeker is required. Whereas on April 25th, the planning board held a public hearing on site plan application, and now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the planning board hereby determines that the site plan application meets all general site plan objectives set forth in 134-15A of the zoning code. It is further resolved that the application of High Rock Views LLC for site plan approval plans last revised on,
What was the date of that?
what date of your last plan set?
This big one given to us?
Yes.
I have a revision date of March 22nd. Does that sound right?
26. Here, site plan notes, it says 26.
March 22nd, 2019.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. But,
Okay.
all right.
This is the site. So that's not the site plan that you're filing, right? The big.
Yes, that's the one
Oh, it
we're
is.
filing, yes.
It
So,
says 22 up there.
under
Better
the
have you or-
S1 site plan.
Oh no, that's like 226.
Yeah, 322.
Okay.
It was probably signed. It was
Yeah.
stamped and signed on
Yeah,
326. But when you look at a revision date, you always want to look at the block
Okay.
and look at the date of revision. So 322.
Right.
Okay, thank you. 322, 2019. Real property is situated at, also known as 3 Rock Street, Cold Spring, is hereby granted subject to the following. Obtain the necessary variances for zoning board of appeal if not already done. We'll leave that in because obviously it's good to stay out on the record. Obtain approval from the village. Note 2 is struck. There's no HDRB approval.
Mhm.
Payment of outstanding escrow, and that's it. I don't have any other conditions? Anybody think they require any other conditions? Okay, so I don't think there's any need to hold the public hearing open or the comment section open. This has been posted for a long time. There's been no public comment.
Mhm.
The sign's been down on the street. It's been in at least 3 issues, maybe 4 issues of the paper.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing
Yeah.
for,
Yeah, the full hearing and comment.
yeah, motion to close the public hearing and comment period for 3 Rock.
Or I'm sorry, I'm sorry, before we do that,
No?
let's vote on the resolution as amended.
Oh, you do that before? I thought we closed the public hearing and then vote on.
No, that's fine. It doesn't- As long as you do both.
Right.
Okay, so you have a
All right.
motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, so then we have the edits
Mhm.
to the resolution.
Yep.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Do we present and then second?
No, I'll go through a roll call vote.
Oh.
Member Hawkins,
Aye.
Member Meyer,
Aye.
Member Eldon,
I,
and Francisco votes aye. Okay,
Excuse me, Matt, I didn't hear a motion or a second on the resolution. There was
oh
a
yeah, we'll do that
motion-
now. Go ahead. Was it you?
Motion to present
Sorry, I've been up since 2.
resolution number blank of
Oh, we don't have a
2019. Okay.
The clerk sends it.
Oh, alrighty. So assigned resolution number for the 3 Rock Street site plan approval.
Very good. So site plan and change of use.
Yes.
Second?
Yeah.
Sue seconded, all in favor?
I,
Okay, we all voted aye, so we're covered there. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yep,
Have a good night.
thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Alright, so Judy's gonna present for 15 Main.
Okay.
We had talked a bbit about ways to kind of move the application forward. Obviously, the process gets very complicated and lengthy when you're having to come in front of several boards. And so we had talked about a way to kind of phase it, so then the applicant, or the owner rather, can start the work and get the bulk of the work done without having to understand everything that's happening on the outside. And one of the biggest question marks is purchasing the land in front from the village. So when the village, first, I think you've been in front of them twice, right?
Yes.
For their request. And so they got a little concerned because they didn't really anticipate the erection of permanent structures on the land. So I think they're gonna contemplate that, so that may take a little bit of time. And then ultimately they'll have to close on the sale, which also takes a little bit of time, and by the time that's all done, the season will probably be over, right? Because we're already into,
Did they not agree to, did you not?
They didn't
go
make a
back the
decision,
second
yeah.
time?
Well, they agreed that they will give us the minimum access that we need to get into
To
the
the-
building.
Okay,
And we have to decide what that is and
okay,
what that's gonna look like.
got it.
Because in my mind, when we were trying to play it out, like HDRB may have an opinion and, so by the time we go around in full
Yeah.
circle,
Right, right.
so
Okay.
what we had spoken about, when Judy and I had spoken, and I spoke to her, the design assistant drafter or other architect, I'm sure, D, was that, you could phase this and just, since I thought the rear was pretty much not visible from a public right of way. The HDRB says it is.
It is?
They have to be some pretty oblique views, but
may not know which one we're looking
well, I think that's what. But I said, listen, I think what we could do on the site plan is we could just call out. But I said would it require a public hearing just to come in and get an approval for a window cut, a railing cut? I said, they want to talk about the finishes of the ramp, and I said, I don't know if it's going to be concrete, I don't know if it's going to be wood. So that's what they would want to know. And I said, I think she's going to stucco the building eventually, as I said.
Yes.
So I said she may stucco that as well to just continue it as as the plane of the front. So they kind of want to understand those things. Now, one offer they did make, I'm not sure if they can follow through on it, was, so we were going back and forth, because obviously what we're trying to do since I started chairing the board is just get people through, right? Because it's, you know, we are here to, to enforce the code and make sure that all the boxes get checked. But we also have to be very aware that, that mortgages are being paid and
Yeah.
properties are sitting idle. And that's not good for anybody,
Right.
right? It's not good for the applicant, it's not good for the village, which is not to say that a commercial application is any more important than a residential, but it's different. Not getting your kitchen remodeled is not the same as not being able to open your business. So I mean, I think that we have to be very sensitive to that. Not that one outweighs the other, but typically what the planning board sees almost exclusively is commercial, right? So what we said is, could we just get, could we eliminate any changes to the exterior of the facade that's visible from a public right of way, with the exception of the ADA ramp. The ADA ramp has to be built to spec to function as an ADA ramp, which has to do with grade of inch per foot, and whatever it is, and then landing, and then turn radiuses, and then doors, which I imagine also are going to have ADA spec. I imagine they probably have to be full vision panel doors, right? They probably have to be full glass doors,
Yes,
because
actually.
you can't
that
be
is
shoving a
right.
door into somebody that's at this height, when the window's up here.
Yeah,
Right? So I imagine it's probably, I said, this stuff gets really, I said, you can talk about nature, you can talk about it with the applicant, but ultimately it's going to be driven by its intended function, which is it's probably a minimally framed glass door, right?
well, from the visibility as well as energy efficiency, I don't know if that counts so much, but
Right.
yeah, it has double benefit, yeah.
And we did, and on your behalf, I reminded them repeatedly, and they were receptive to that this is a non-contributing building. Nobody can say this is a historic building. You can say that this is a great example of really any architecture that you might agree, which is good in this case. So one thing one of the members thought that given your familiarity with the board, you could actually get an application together to them, and they could potentially act on it next week.
Yes, we spoke.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we
Oh,
spoke this morning, yep,
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
So
and-
are you feeling good about that, or?
Yes, I do feel
Okay,
good
good.
about it, yeah.
Because I told them, so we're kind of working together, and I'm saying, yeah,
Thank
okay, so you can see it if you, I don't know, stand on a soapbox on New Street, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and obviously we're not leafed in yet, so obviously maybe that's a little bit different.
Mm.
But regardless, that's their purview, and they should be given the right to kind of play in those areas. But I said ultimately, at the end of the day, similar to like 2 Depot and those second story windows that are egress windows, I imagine a lot of these have to be egress windows, right?
Yes.
Or some of them do. They're all lot line windows.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
said all these things are going to be dictated by their function more than design, right?
Yes.
I said then on top of that, it's a non-contributing structure, which this board has been pretty clear that they want innovation in the district. They don't tell the applicant to give me a Victorian, right? Give me a Second Empire, right? They basically say give us show us what you want to do, and that's how these things get built. That's how I understand it. Okay, so we can. This is. I don't know if we should probably go down there because it's probably a little hard to.
Yeah.
So let's go. So the application now, just so everybody's clear, we'll walk through that really quick. Is what the challenge? There's a lot of the challenges. Obviously, there's sea level rise. That's why she's raising the floor and then creating the bathtub. Then there's also ADA access, because obviously it's a complete reconstruction, and when you touch more than a certain percentage of the building, it's a total change. Then you should bring it up to code. So the application was changed to, instead of residential and cafe, to cafe and B&B rental, right? That way then the whole application is commercial. And in the B1 in 2010, what the legislative body did was come up with these parking waivers to figure out as a means to approve changes of use in the B1 on Main Street. So obviously, what that means then is there would be no on-site parking. The parking would all be handled with waivers. Businesses in the B1 on Main Street have a grandfathered 1 space. So Judy's already given us a parking table. So all that parking would be handled through parking waivers given by the village board. It would then mean that we don't lose a space on the street because there's no curb cut. Currently, there's a carport. Like maybe it's not a carport because there's no curb cut.
Correct.
It might have been a carport at some point, but there's a port. But so there wouldn't be a loss of a tree or the space to the curb cut. So I mean, I don't. Obviously the board has their own. Each of us view this. As we view it. I mean, it seems to me it's a much more favorable impacts, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we can just take a look at the plans down there.
I should have put on a board,
Nah, don't worry about it.
Sorry.
try to keep it minimum, so what we're going to do is, so this is the main street, two trees, and Rincon Cafe is here. We're coming down and we're going up the ramp, and the ADA door is next to an entry door, because we can't discriminate against the disabled. So we felt that that was close enough to the front entry, and there will be some cleaning up of the facade, but we're proposing the door in roughly in the same area. Obviously, they will go up, but it's going to be a 3-foot door and operable window here, which we have to get approved by the Historic Review Board. And this is a new door. This is a window in an existing opening. And this is a modified door into an existing opening and residential in the back. We will have this notch, which is new, a little bit of outdoor space for the user.
This is
Yeah.
B&B in the back,
Correct, this is the,
not residential, right? Okay.
correct, yeah, this is the B&B portion. And the cafe is tiny. It's very tiny, it's just a little seating in the front and a little bit of bar and the counter area, and then 2 bathrooms, office, and a storage.
What is the total square footage of the B&B?
B&B, let's see. 1166. 1,166.
Will you be updating this to reflect bed and breakfast instead of apartment?
They did it here, but I guess, yeah, we should have done that here. Yeah, so, let's see, and then, yeah, so the hours of operation, we were thinking, allowable is 7 to 10, we're saying maybe 10 to 10, and just keeping it very quiet. What else? And the building is built to the, almost to the lot line. There's a little leeway here, but we're insulating to the inside, and perhaps just refinishing with some stucco around here. And
What is the finish now, actually?
I think it's like pouch concrete or.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it could be stucco, but it looks smoother.
I don't
than-
think it's stucco. We went through the other day on Main Street. Didn't seem to be able to tell
It's
what it
painted
was. It has been all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on the side it's wood,
block.
all
Right.
kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the material here? Is it on the deck?
On the deck, I believe
Like a wood deck or some?
I think it's going to be concrete just for practicality.
Because of the
The
water
flood level, yeah, yeah.
What is their office for?
That's funny. She just wanted an extra room, and so if it's a B&B, what is it? Is it?
So the extra
another
room is
room.
for the cafe or it will be?
That's part of the
No,
apartment.
no, this is the B&B.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So
space.
maybe we should just
So
label
that'll
it as a bedroom.
Bedroom.
It
Yeah.
looks like it
Yeah.
needs, like.
It has a closet, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it does have a
Yes.
closet.
And a
So
window, so maybe you should write down bedroom or
Bedroom.
something, because it's kind of weird to say office.
office. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is
Uh,
it a?
And right now the deck exists?
No, the wall continues like this, and we're carving out the
Got it.
outdoor space.
Got it.
Is this the area that Historic was
We're
concerned about?
that they would
There-
see.
yeah,
Oh,
but the good,
from
but the
Main
good
Street.
thing is though is that they're not, they're very clear that it's a non-contributing building. So, you start to, and I think I can completely understand why they want to talk about this a lot, right? What
Mhm.
happens up here. That's why it's taken out. There is a stoop that is going to go here, obviously, to allow access to that door. But for our purposes, that door is not here. right? We're really just looking at these two
Right, we're not-
entrances.
Yeah, and we will get that approved, before.
That'll be separate.
So that way, even if this drags on, or even if it can't be done, that everything is it's a functioning site plan, right? Because we can't really sign off on
Totally.
something that's half-baked. But it could take them a while with respect to the village board figuring out how they want to sell it, what's their, we have never, and even when I was on the board, we hadn't really had anybody say they wanted to build something on it. We always just thought of it as land that somebody traveled across and wanted to put some chairs or some sandwich board signs out in the summer, so that it's kind of a new concept for them. So it might take a little bit of time for them to kind of speak to the village attorney as to how they want to do those.
Mhm.
So that way, then it basically allows them to get it, because obviously the big work is in here, and really, because they're doing they're raising the floor joists, they're doing the bathtub, they got a lot of work to do. And they're raising the roof, so
They're not
Um,
raising the roof. Are you
Oh,
raising
the
it?
rear.
That
the
was
rear.
the next thing I was gonna say, the back
Oh,
roof here is
sorry.
lower, so we're just matching that roof,
Mhm.
yeah.
which is something that the HDRB should be happy about. The roof is in horrible condition.
Mhm.
So I mean, if it is visible, and I don't doubt that it is. I mean, Carolyn went and looked at it. Kathleen looked at it with any members, and they said they did see it. So anything that's gonna happen is obviously gonna be an improvement to what they're seeing now. And again, it's a non-contributing structure that a lot of these things are really gonna be driven by the fact that they're all lot line windows. Looks like many of them, or at least some of them at least, have to be egress windows, right?
Yes, we're saying that this is an egress, I think that was the tricky part, calling this a bedroom. I
Yeah,
think that's
is it
the
not-
window,
Oh,
that
Besides
we
egress.
we can't squeeze ourselves
Oh,
out here.
Yeah, so
I
you're
think
right.
that's why.
It
I
may have to
think
stay
we-
in office, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know what to call it.
What about like den?
Yeah, actually.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually,
Because
that's
that
not a
suits
bad
the
idea.
program.
Yeah, I mean, you could just
Yeah.
call it sitting room or whatever, sitting room,
Yeah,
den,
yeah.
whatever. Because I guess you're right, I guess
And there's.
I mean, you
no-
could have an office in an
So
apartment.
is it because the window can't open out? Or
that
window
we-
sides?
I think the
or-
body doesn't fit out between the buildings, right?
Oh.
We are not
right
allowed
here.
to egress through someone else's property, I think that's.
Oh, that's that same issue that keeps coming up, okay.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, they don't count it as egress if you don't land on property
Your
that you
property.
maintain. Because then you're required to keep it clear, right? Remember we were talking about like Silver
Yeah,
Spoon,
Silver
and
Spoon,
if it
right.
comes out onto,
Somebody
on
else's.
Carolyn's, on the yarn shop, she could be putting furniture out there, right?
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think with the sliding, excuse me, with the sliding doors that you're proposing, it feels like a den, it can be kind of open to the living space or closed off
Yeah.
if necessary.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about, and this might be because I missed the last meeting or the last time we discussed this, but so what's happening with the parking, is it just through waiver or, cause that's kind of our purview.
All through, yeah, so
All
that's the,
through.
that's the point of Juhi's amendment, is to say that for the applicant, if it's all done under commercial, parking waivers are
Only granted for commercial, got it.
not just,
Oh, no.
well, or existing residential, right? They're
okay.
in the B, stuff that exists in the B and B, not for expansion of things within the B and B.
Okay,
It's not as if you could build an apartment house on a vacant lot in the
Right.
B1 and then just buy a bunch of,
Right.
that you'd have to provide the parking on site.
right,
But where it can't be, because it's an existing condition, right, that it's pre-existing, that on commercial applications, that if this had residential, you could say, let's transfer the residential like we did for 2 Depot Square, right? That there was already 3 or 4 apartments, they wanted to create 7 apartments. I'm like, no, we can't do that. We can use the parking waivers to approve the existing residential, but not for an expansion of a residential. It isn't for really an expansion of anything, right? So here, you're going from office to cafe and B&B, and the reason they selected B&B is because it's commercial use.
okay.
And that way then all of it can be bought with waivers, it can be handled with the waivers, and,
Okay. I really like the,
Five waivers.
yeah, and then one is obviously grandfathered, to any Main Street business, so it's one less.
Mhm.
so you only need 4.
Oh, so the rec,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
the village board needs, to- okay.
And we'll correct that when we,
okay, or should I note it here, one grandfather?
that's fine, yeah.
So this space, this covered porch, it's really just a covered porch to allow for circulation back towards that door.
Yeah,
So it's the ramp, that's the ADA ramp coming
Yeah.
up,
yeah.
and then it lands, then
And
the
it
wider
lands
piece
flat.
is level, right?
I'm just curious, cause I really like the fact that you have skylights in there to allow it not to be super dark and it's safe and all that good stuff.
It should be nice looking, because then obviously you're gonna have a barrier, you're gonna have to have a barrier here. I think on your last, a couple plans back, the ramp was meeting,
In
The
front,
stoop.
Yeah.
but I don't think you're gonna do that anymore,
So-
right?
Well, I agree with
Or you
you
might.
that, I mean, client likes that idea because it's inviting.
Right.
Because right now, but long story short, but we were afraid that if somebody's turning here to get into here, that it
And that's
may
what
not.
we discussed, it might be a
You'd
safety
still require a
issue, yeah.
barrier.
Yeah.
then
You'd
it
still
was
have,
not
you'd still
safe,
require the
yeah.
barrier going east to west.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise you could, you'd have to empty the stair, you'd have to enter the stairs this way.
Right.
You'd have to come up this way, which she didn't
She
want.
didn't
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So it used to be those were gonna meet
Mm-hmm.
and be a turn radius. But, so now, what we have here, what we can review and have a public hearing for, if we all agree tonight that we're ready to set it, is a functioning site plan that doesn't require the stoop, right? So you come up on the ramp, you then turn to the, you turn to the level platform, there's the entrance, an ADA entrance to the B&B, to the new B&B, there's an ADA accessible entrance, as well as just a standard entrance to a small cafe, which this can only probably require one point of egress and, I
Yes,
mean, such a
correct.
small square footage, I
It
mean, the
is-
path of travel is like,
Less
it's
than.
a short dash.
Yes, far
Yeah.
less than 75
Okay.
occupants, and we couldn't fit that many.
So that way then they can get in and get opening, because I said as long as you don't, with the exception of paint, the HDRB is gonna wanna talk about what happens in the front. So there's obviously the unattractive windows, and there's the things that they wanna change, but that's gonna be dependent on the stoop and purchasing the land and then placing the stoop on it. And then it's gonna have to be a public hearing with the ZBA for the variance, a public hearing with the HDRB for the facade. So that stuff's gonna tick away for for a bit, even if they all move quickly. So this is a way really to kind of get them under, to get the hammer swinging and get them really probably open by season, and depending on the work group, or at least working.
Yes.
So, great, so you think you're good then going to the HDRB next week?
Yes.
Perfect,
And,
great.
I mean, we'll have a discussion on, whether they like what we're proposing here or not, and if that's still open and the.
Like-
Yeah. Oh,
Maybe I should come. I mean, it has to, it is the only way that access can be granted.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a really
Yeah.
efficient use of that.
You know,
I don't see what
Yeah.
else you can do without.
Yeah, and you don't have that, and that's not a given. The front stuff
Yeah.
is not a given at all.
yeah, and we couldn't fit an ADA and then turn around without imposing into the sidewalk.
Which
It
you-
was a challenge. So, I mean, and luckily the client really liked this idea. At first she was not too crazy about it, but then she said, I think it's better than seeing a car sitting there.
Mhm.
And so that's why she really liked that idea.
I think it'll be very pleasant,
It's
especially with the
gonna be nice.
skylights and the, obviously you'll pick a nice barrier railing that's,
Right, yeah.
that's probably gonna be similar to what you're gonna use coming down the stoop, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, alright, so great, so you filled out a part one.
Yes.
I spoke to John. John thinks this is also type 2 seeker exempt, so it wouldn't require any further review. So still, like I said, still good to get the form and put it in the file. Maybe I'll try to come to the HDRB's meeting,
Thank
just
you.
so it doesn't, because a lot of this stuff I was trying to explain, so we want to talk about these doors and we want to talk about this. I said, well, look, there are ADA specifications. They have to function to their intended function. I said, that's the
Sure,
whole
yeah.
point of the planning board saying, why don't we just do this,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So but that's fine. I mean, they want to look at it, and that's certainly reasonable. And if this stuff is, they're saying it's visible, I'm sure it is, and it's in rough shape. So it would really be getting a building that's been really in a pretty bad state for a very long time. The hammer swinging and getting it looking good again, and then this stuff can follow without being a hindrance to the entire project starting, because the last one had a huge amount of delays.
Mhm.
And that's why the building was sold.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said to the client, do you want me to do all the research and find out what was rejected? No, we'll just propose what we want to do. So-
Yeah, no, that was, the planning board had the application forms a year.
Wow.
They were looking, I don't know, they were trying to they were asking to see things that the planning board doesn't look at, location of
Like where the
ovens and, you know, and
Yeah.
fire suppression systems, and I said, not only do we not see that, I don't want it on the plan, because I then took over the planning board and I got these plans, I'm like, I don't even want this on the plans, I don't wanna stamp these and sign them and have any confusion that I'm approving a fire suppression system, you know, for a set of ovens,
Yeah.
you know, or propane tanks, that's all code enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in review for a long time in planning board. It was Ella's Bella's and Cold
Oh,
Spring
that's right.
and Cold Spring
Yeah.
Coffee Pantry.
Yeah.
So there was nothing really earth shattering about it. It was basically just that they were looking for.
So you're still gonna keep this at the street level, or you're gonna raise the entrance there? Are there steps on the street? No?
We will have to put steps, and that's what we need to negotiate on phase 2. With
To
the
get
village
some, to
board.
buy a piece of thing for the
So-
street.
Right.
So will you, you'll come back, we'll move forward on this particular site plan and then you'll come back
Yes.
With the
with
historical
an
guy.
application to revise
Yeah.
or a
Right.
revision
Phase two.
that
For this phase 2,
will
yeah.
add the egress and the, okay.
And if any limitations happen to, well, is there any chance that there's any limitations to granting access to this sidewalk? Was that, or did I read
Well,
somewhere
that's-
they didn't want to?
Well, that's why I think you have to have a plan that functions.
Without-
You manage to the extreme to say this never happens, right? And that phase 2, you know, unfortunately doesn't include a stoop, but you at least, you know, and then I imagine you focus a lot on this window being very inviting and the
Right.
facade being beautiful and this being open, because I think this is gonna appear pretty open,
Yes.
you know, this porch. And, you know, look, if you find a very nice window, you'll find your way in, right? If you wanna come in, if it looks inviting, you know.
Sometimes that
So,
adds to the.
Exact, yeah.
Right.
Might withdraw?
Well, I was just, I mean, not that this is even, but part of the reason I would be more inclined to say, yeah, this will work, whether something happens here or not, is that even in the case that you can't do anything here, could you, I'm not so familiar with the building, I haven't walked that way in a while,
Mhm.
and I should run by there, but is there a way that this door could be at street level, or no? Because you're lifting everything.
The floor,
The floor
The
is
floor's going up
2
2 feet.
up.
Right, if we
I
put it
thought
at
the
street
flood
level, then we have to figure in the steps in here.
That's what I'm wondering, because if in the worst case scenario, you have to put this at street level, you can always shift, you have such a long length here.
It's true,
That
yes.
you could shift this ADA access, and then you could always have your step up from within,
Inside.
if, in a
Yeah.
worst case scenario, which
Yeah.
is why I would say regardless, yeah.
Or here, and then we can do steps out.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
or whatever, so it's, you.
We do have solutions,
You
yeah.
have, yeah, it
Yes.
sounds
I
like
mean, it's-
there's,
No,
yeah,
but the
so.
thing is, if you move it farther back, would people say you're discriminating the
No.
Well, we will just go through one door.
Well,
We'll just
here
go
it
to all
would-
kinds
It would-
of
it would be-
If
it would be a
you put
single
steps
entrance.
here, you
Oh,
just
yeah.
have a single entrance,
Oh,
this
okay.
is where the.
closure.
Yeah.
I don't foresee, I think this will get resolved, and I don't think it's really gonna take that much time, I just don't wanna, it's not always great to plan on something that doesn't have a definite timeline,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So I think I think it'll, you know, there's probably a good chance that it'll go forward, and it isn't really all that complicated to say, you know, no permanent structure in excess of, you know, X number of square footage or a lot coverage, you know.
Yeah.
I think what they don't wanna do is have these things be open to variance being granted on them, right? So they probably do it with easements that can't be extinguished, right? And that the village would hold those easements and they'd run with the land
Right.
to just kind of say, you know, that basically this, you know, the stoop can exist in a certain position. Because otherwise then they're open just to ZBA variances. They go to the ZBA and the ZBA can, you know, at their discretion can grant a variance.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
village board did mention that whatever they allow us to buy, that it would only be for limiting access to the building. Yeah, that's it, you know, just steps and possibly coverage, I'm not 100% sure on that, but
They're kind of like Carolyn's Flowers was, right? Just a covered stoop.
I believe so,
Yeah.
yeah, so they just said
Okay.
that they were willing to at least grant that much, you know, access, front
Yeah,
door
so that
access.
sounds like it's moving forward.
Yeah.
And- all right, so I think
Can I
What-
just have
yeah.
a quick question? I'm not super familiar with the B and B use in the code, and I just wanted, are there any requirements associated with the B and B use that need to be reflected on here? And the reason I'm asking is, it's referred to as an apartment when we're talking about it,
No,
or
it's,
we're.
no, it's in the application, this is just a
No,
typo, it says
I
bed,
understand
yeah.
that, but this is a workaround because of the parking. I mean, it was gonna be a residence, right, and.
A long-term
because-
rental.
A long-term rental, right? But it's been converted because there was
All the
this
challenges,
challenge
yeah.
associated with parking.
and ADA access.
And ADA access, and this is the
And
way
rising,
that's
and
been.
raising the building.
Right, but so specifically, the issues that are answered by changing the use to a bed and breakfast is that you no longer need on-site parking for a residence.
That parking waivers are available to you because it's a commercial use.
Yes, right, exactly.
And it's
the
currently in a
the
commercial use, and it's no
configuration-
expansion
right.
of space.
Exactly. So, but I'm looking at this and we're like, oh, it's called an office. Why is it an office? It's a very large. It doesn't have the appearance of what might be assumed to be a B&B. And so I was just wondering, are there any requirements that have to be met in order for something to be?
Probably just
Consider
probably
B&B.
just a minimum,
Yeah,
Right.
probably a definition of like how much the lease can be or.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that,
Yeah. And we can all review that on our own independently, go through the code.
I'm just
And then
raising the
we'll
aspect
see what the comment is at public hearing, we'll all do
Okay.
our own review. To my understanding, it's a minimum,
Right.
that you can't go any smaller, but you can certainly, obviously there are short-term rentals, and I was just in one that's a bedroom with a
Right.
kitchen and, because obviously there are efficiencies, right?
Right, and but also if they're an efficiency, that's what makes it more likely to be a short-term rental. Nobody wants to cram themselves into an SRO for a 1 year period of time.
Right,
This is a larger area than my house.
Mhm.
That would be a very comfortable place to live, and so I'm just thinking about, I'm looking at this, and so just write it so that you're talking about a B&B, all this stuff should.
well, the resolution,
B&B.
B&Bs can be, I don't think there's any maximum room size, certainly
Mhm.
take a look at the code.
Mhm.
What about
You can
lease,
use
what
it
about
for
in
just-
terms of lease duration?
I don't
in the
think-
code,
see, I
they're
don't-
They're short-term rentals.
It has to be a short-term rental.
But what
because I
is
think
that,
that's
so
what
short term, what does that mean? Short term, is there a term length, is there a specific length is that
Probably somewhere.
A month?
We'll look it
does
up.
that mean,
It's just typically, typically
Yeah.
less than a month.
okay.
We'll look that up and,
Maybe you can rent it as a two-bedroom B&B. I mean,
Well, not without
people rent
egress.
seven.
Not without
No.
egress. You have to have egress
So
from
you
a
need
bedroom.
egress in a bedroom.
In every bedroom?
A secondary means of egress in a bedroom, yeah. Because if the fire's out here,
Uh-huh.
That's the
How do you get out?
So you have to, so this is where you're gonna jump out, this is then.
No,
But you
can't.
can't do that, because
Yeah.
this is other people's property
Right,
already.
yeah, we've already established
So
that. yeah.
therefore, so where are you gonna get out?
These
from
are
here?
not
That's why it's a
egress
den.
windows, that's why this can't be used as a bedroom.
Right,
yeah, so this is the bedroom and we're going out this way and this is kind of like an area of refuge.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The outdoor deck.
this is, this is like a concrete
Bunker.
Yeah.
bunker.
Right.
Cool. That looks great.
And also from, the fear of using it as apartment, I mean, the client prefers, actually she liked the idea of just
Mhm.
being a short-term rental so that,
Mhm.
so that you could have guests in there, so often. But the shared entry just threw that kind of notion off, if it had a private entry to the apartment,
Good point.
that would have been more appealing as an apartment. Who would wanna rent that kind of apartment with when you're like all that noise of people going and
And somebody
going?
flushing the public toilet behind your sink.
Yeah.
With
But obviously, the change of use is going to be for a B&B, and obviously then it
Right.
becomes an enforcement issue. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't make decisions based
Yeah.
on people not complying with the code.
Mm.
But definitely take a look, if you have questions with respect
Yeah.
to B&B. B&B can be, I think it's 1 to 4 rooms, I think it's like that, something like that. There's like a certain number, but it does start at 1, because it does start at 1, because I was surprised it's only 1, and that makes it a B&B, but it does say 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, it's a small number. But it does start at 1, which I was surprised, because I would have thought it would have been 3 or more, or like,
And that's,
Oh,
and
1
it's
to-
permitted because it's in the B1.
It's a B1, it's commercial use, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways, when you look at it, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an
Makes more sense.
accommodation. I think the application overall is just better.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at impacts to, to losing the tree, losing a parking space, and parking down on Lower Main is even worse than it is up here.
Mm.
So I mean, so if that person stays a while, then there's the parking. Obviously, the current owner has offered to let them park at their place. We don't consider that because they could have a different owner the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's an allowed use. It complies with what the legislative intent of the parking waivers were for, and
If
I think ultimately is a good.
the hotel, the
Hudson House?
Yeah, Hudson House has a lot off-site where they
They lease,
where they lease
from the village, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's not it. So if the owner has the ability to provide parking off-site, is that, I'm thinking, to me, that's a similar parking situation as Hudson House. If they,
I don't know how the Hudson House approvals were done, because ultimately at any time the village could not lease that to them.
this is
Right.
true.
Oh, well,
So I mean, it's a little silly to say you're planning when your plan is something that is tenuous, right? Like
But in this case, she owns both properties.
Today.
But he's
That-
saying,
Today.
yeah. So what
Yeah.
if,
Right,
um,
okay.
so I guess
Mhm.
she did have an idea of asking, goodness, gosh, the engineer's
yeah.
office.
Yeah, Tim Miller across
Tim
the
Miller.
street.
oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
he's
Yeah.
got that big lot in the
He's got a
back,
big
yeah.
lot.
Right, she says he hardly uses, it's
That's a
never
huge
full
amount of parking, yeah.
capacity.
Mhm.
So she was wondering what if she rented his parking, but I guess
But
it's a
the same-
similar.
same.
For me,
right?
everything has to reside on this piece of paper, right?
Mm.
It can't be,
Unless it's
and
under-
go see.
Yeah,
What's that?
unless it was under the same ownership, unless that
Mhm.
lot,
But that goes back to if the ownership changes, I think
Mm.
in either way.
right, I see
Yeah.
what you're saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they're
So-
separate sites. So
Yeah,
they
they're
can
separate
always
site
be-
plans.
They can always be
Right.
sold
Yeah.
at different.
Yeah.
They should just work a deal out with the village and they should just,
But again, this is, it's and it's not entirely unlikely that many times the renters are coming up by the train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, it's true.
If
Yes.
I had come up before I moved here, I would.
This is the kind of place you'd want to be adjacent to a cafe.
And you
with
get
a
coffee.
wine bar, coffee.
Cool.
All right,
With
so
a den.
do people? I'll have to shoot you the blast zone,
Blast so.
just the neighbor notification.
Oh,
Just
I see.
to typically we
Yes.
just do like on either side and then across the street.
Yes.
Is that what
yeah,
everybody
I-
thinks?
Yeah.
So the width of,
Or
So
it
you've
could
got-
be adjacent, so you've got Lusk,
and then I guess we should do the rear too.
that's Lusk.
No, the rear. That's the side.
That's Lusk. Lusk is here. They've
Oh,
got
they
the-
wrap around. They wrap around.
What's that lot? That lot
They-
that is on New
Oh, they're
Street.
back here too?
Yeah,
Oh my God, really?
yeah, that's
Okay,
big,
wow.
he's got a big.
Okay,
thing.
well, so I'll look at the tax map and I'll shoot that over to you tomorrow, just, just to get the cards out. Those just need to go out, I think was it 5 or 6 days in advance.
Yes, and yeah, I think we've. I wonder if we've already done the research on the neighbors, but.
Oh, you have it?
But yeah, usually when we do the work, I mean, we can look at the tax map.
Okay, great, yeah, so send it to me what you have.
Yeah.
We typically like to, we're gonna wanna touch on either side,
Yes. Mhm.
and
whoever's
then
visible.
And then
across the street,
Mhm.
and then the rear.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
So you're basically gonna take one property.
Yeah.
And encircle,
Yes.
yours.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. That
Going
we're
one
used
property
to.
out to the east and the west, and then grab everybody from the north and the south.
Yes. Mhm.
And that way then we're done, because when you come back, we don't need to do a, the board at that time will decide, but I don't believe we don't need to do a public hearing to amend the site plan to add the stoop. So you won't have to do a public hearing with us. We just amend the site plan,
Okay.
you'd file it with us, the board would look at it, we'd talk about it, and then when we're ready, we just stamp it and sign it off, and that'll be it.
Yeah, because
We
it's
just do a
minimal.
resolution to just say that it's, because the ZBA is gonna first have to give you the variance
Right.
for the front yard setback.
And so then for our deadline for planning board, if we can submit it by next Friday with all this information, then
Be
we're
able
good to
to do
go.
the week after.
A week out.
No,
Then
no,
we-
if you do
this
before Friday.
I mean,
Bef-
it won't, I don't know if we can do it by tomorrow. So if we do it tomorrow, then it's the following Thursday?
We try to get 2 issues of the paper.
Mhm.
We're not required to under the code, but that is our past practice, is to get it, and I think that's Monday morning, right? We have to get it for the legal notice.
I don't know I can't keep track of all that.
I'll send out and ask John to do the legal notice. I think what you have here,
with
if
the-
you just get it cleaned up with just,
Yes.
because you just have some typing to do.
Yes, yeah.
And just get that back to the village clerk so it's on file with the village
Mhm.
clerk in case anybody sees the notice on, the earliest they would see it is on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm,
So as long as you get it back before Wednesday with these changes
yes.
and give it to Jeff, so then that way if anybody stops in, they can take a look at it.
Okay, when's the next Wednesday, by next Wednesday?
You should say maybe Tuesday, Wednesday.
Let's say Tuesday, close of
Yeah,
business,
yeah.
because then Wednesday, the paper's out Wednesday morning, it really
Right.
should be here in case somebody picks it
Yeah.
up and
Great.
drops in.
That is doable. I mean, I think all this is doable by tomorrow, but
Oh, yeah.
and just wanted to make, for your convenience, we would reference the code, the B&B and short-term
Okay.
definition.
That would be
For
great.
your convenience, at least call out,
Great.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, do that on there, and that way it's good for them when anybody comes in and has any questions, if the public wants to look at it, they can answer all their own questions, they may not even attend if they can find all the information that they're looking for.
Yes.
Okay, good, excellent,
Well, thank you.
great,
Excellent.
thanks.
This has been so pleasant.
Well, we try, yeah, we have
Thank
a,
you. Thank
that's
you.
for me, right?
I
don't think I have one of these yet.
Okay.
Great, excellent, yeah, so and then I'll see if I can attend, maybe some of us can attend.
Is it next Wednesday?
Is it next Wednesday or the Wednesday?
Yeah,
No,
it's
they're the
starting
8th, right? They're just before us. They're on the same schedule as us.
She did mention
Uh,
8th.
The 8th, yeah.
I can come to that.
Because I want to make sure that it doesn't kind of get mired into what's the look of a ramp and the look of an ADA door. I mean, we can't, we need to be very clear about, it needs to serve its intended purpose first.
Right.
Secondly, there's the overarching reality that this is a non-contributing building by any stretch. It's not contributing anything. All it's doing is detracting. So I mean that I think that, and I think they're very open to that. Carolyn and Kathleen's comments have been great. But, they have a very fine focus, as they should, and that's what we entrust them to do. But I think here, I told them, I said, you're gonna get a final look at this thing. When they look at the final finishes and the railing and the stoop and the light fixtures and the windows in the front, I said, that's really what's gonna present to the public. And they said, well, we can see the ramp. And I said, well, sure you can see the ramp, but it's I imagine it's probably gonna be concrete. I said, but then again, I don't know that. Maybe it's just that they said, we don't wanna see pressure treated wood.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's those are real comments, right? They're right, so, but I just wanna make sure we kind of stay on the path of, moving this forward, and then getting a final look. I mean, because you may want masonry and then stucco at the front of it, because it's gonna be a pretty good sized mass, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna probably wanna see, some pressure treated,
No, definitely not.
like some sort of like deck,
No. Well,
or a temporary ramp,
Yeah.
so, because to get the look that you're gonna want probably it's going to be engineered, it's gonna be, it's probably gonna be poured or built masonry. And then you're probably gonna stucco it right across the front,
the client did have a different idea. She got inspired by Foundry Park, so
Is that right?
I'll let you know what
The red bricks.
Okay.
what she
We're all thinking
likes,
of.
but
Proceed at your own risk.
yes. And so, but concrete is a great fallback plan because it's a flood zone, and I think that is But she did have certain idea that she got inspired.
Oh, like a wood
from,
structure?
The plank that she liked there. But
The one, the sloping up to the platform.
The viewing platform?
She liked the plank that made the pathway,
Yeah.
from the cannon. She loved the pathway, the material that's on.
Oh, the
But is that what
the
she's
metal-
seeing as
the
is that
metal
what
thing.
she's seeing as the surface of it?
Oh, I know where
The metal,
Yes,
the
she likes
metal.
that.
Or the
as a
structure, or the
surface.
vertical structure?
She likes the surface, walking
No,
Yeah,
the
the walking
metal
surface.
thing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean,
But,
Yeah.
but to do that would require a lot of fill and, it's a,
but
Right.
it will rattle, so
Mhm.
we will have to talk to her about that. It may make some noise and make it feel
More
unstable.
tenuous,
yeah.
So it's something to talk about
Mhm.
further. She's
Mhm.
she's not wed to it, but she
Yeah.
was attracted to that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
great.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming in. Thanks. Alright, so I guess we need a motion to set the public hearing for 15 Main Street for March 9th. I'm sorry,
March?
is that April?
May 9.
May, going
Right now,
back.
it's
May
already
Sorry, I
ended.
gotta- I
It's
gotta get
almost
to
Yeah,
it.
May
I
9.
knew it was M, yeah.
Thursday, May 9. So motion to set the public hearing for 15 Main Street on Thursday, May 9. Do I have to identify the chamber of use?
No, just
Site
for,
plan
yeah, just for the
approval.
property's good, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Alright, so we'll get those things, Judy's gonna get the plans updated to us no later than close of business on Tuesday, of next week.
Great.
So the clerk will have them, I'll ask John for the legal notice, I'll shoot him an email tonight and ask him for that tomorrow, so the clerk can put it in the paper for the Wednesday edition.
Okay.
And then anybody who can, it might be good to attend the HDRB's.
Which is
Um,
next week, Wednesday, right?
No,
No,
the
the
week
following.
They're the same as us.
The same,
They're-
okay.
Yeah, they're the
Like,
Wednesday
so
before us.
that would be the
Yeah.
8th.
8th,
Yeah,
right.
they're the Wednesday
Yeah.
before us.
All right.
Yeah,
What are they,
Um,
8:30?
they're at, oh gosh, I didn't.
They are late, they're 7,
Yeah,
are they 8?
8 p.m.
8.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
they're
you.
late, yeah.
Okay. Your public hearing will be at 7.
That is so much doable, I can go to bed on time.
Yeah. That's
Thank
right,
you.
that's what we're all about, getting you to bed.
With 2
time.
kids,
Getting stuff done.
with 2 kids, one is going to bed on time.
Thank you so much for working it, to make it, to make the ADA ramp happen, thank you.
I mean, we're quite happy about it, we surprised ourselves.
Yeah.
I have to say.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Alright,
Thank you.
see you.
Bye.
Yep, good night. Alright,
We have
I don't think we have anything else, do we?
We're done.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
all in favor?
Hi.
Great, so then we'll, like I said, I think and I think Carol and Kathleen were good on the application, but,
That's
you know,
great.
they do what they do, which is then they go look at it and then start talking about designing and, so we just have